So my thought this week is college sports might be the only billion-dollar industry where nobody can tell us who the CEO is.
Every major American business has a CEO. The NFL has Roger Goodell. The NBA has Adam Silver. Major League Baseball has Rob Manfield. But college football, a multi-billion-dollar industry, doesn't have one. And I think almost every problem we argue about today comes back to that simple fact. NIL, revenue sharing, the transfer portal, eligibility, Congress, lawsuits. Everybody wants somebody to fix these problems. The problem is nobody is actually in charge. Greg Sankey says the SEC and Big Ten have not considered merging. Listen to this.
What seems to be the tipping point in this discussion is this notion, an erroneous notion. I want to be clear about that. And then I shared this with Senator Cruz along with my colleague Tony Petitti. We are not having some conversation about it.
Ask 10 fans who runs college football, and most of them will say the NCAA. But the NCAA doesn't negotiate television contracts. The NCAA didn't create NIL. The NCAA didn't negotiate the House settlement. The NCAA doesn't control conference realignment. And increasingly, the NCAA finds itself reacting to change rather than leading it. In many ways, the NCAA has become the organization everybody blames, but few people actually follow. The NCAA is not the CEO.
As a lawmaker, it was not my intention to try to insert Congress into college sports. College sports came to Congress because changing the law is the only way to fix the legal chaos that we're seeing right now. Congress, unfortunately, helped create the legal environment in which college sports now operates. Federal antitrust, broadcasting, and interstate commerce laws shape what schools and conferences and governing bodies can do. If college sports cannot enforce basic rules because of the laws that Congress wrote, then Congress has a responsibility to adjust them, and we're the only people who can. That's exactly what the Protect College Sports Act does.
When Congress starts holding hearings about your sport, that's usually a sign something isn't working. Congress can pass laws. Congress can provide legal protections. But Congress isn't supposed to decide NIL rules. Congress isn't supposed to decide transfer rules. Congress isn't supposed to determine roster management. Yet, here we are. Because when nobody has the authority, eventually everybody gets involved.
That the NCAA cannot control anything.
Paul Feinbaum recently said he knew private equity and Cody Campbell had been involved in shaping legislation. Think about that. Not the NCAA, not a commissioner, not a league office. Outside influences increasingly shape the future of college sports. Television has influence. Donors have influence. Courts have influence. Congress has influence. Conference commissioners have influence. But influence isn't authority. And that's the problem. I've spent nearly 40 years working in businesses and organizations. I've worked in small companies. I've worked in large companies. I've worked for and advised private equity. I've sat in executive meetings and leadership teams. And every organization I've ever worked in had one thing in common. When something went wrong, everybody knew who was accountable. There was a CEO. There was a president. There was a VP of sales. There was somebody who ultimately owned the decision. And college football doesn't really have that. Imagine if the NFL worked this way. The AFC East has one commissioner. The NFC East had another. Owners could ignore league rules. Federal judges determined free agency. Congress occasionally got involved. And Roger Goodell couldn't make anybody do anything. You'd call that chaos. College football fans call that Tuesday. The question isn't who runs college football. The question is, can a multi-billion dollar industry continue operating without somebody ultimately being responsible for the entire enterprise? Because every time we ask, why doesn't the NCAA fix this? Why doesn't Greg Sankey fix this? Why doesn't Congress fix this? What we're really asking is, who's accountable? Who's in charge? And right now, college football doesn't have that person. College football doesn't have a talent problem. It doesn't have a television problem. It doesn't have an interest problem. It may simply have an accountability problem because every major industry eventually decides who owns the outcome. College football hasn't done that yet. And until it does, we'll continue asking the same question. Who's in charge? Because right now, college football doesn't have a CEO.